3, 4. All I had to give, and I done the best I can. So now it's up to you to finish what I began. Yes, I will always love you, and I'll be there just for you. So in all that you do, my child, to yourself you must be true. So promise me that you will fight for what it is that you believe. No matter what you do in life, it's in the giving that you'll receive. Wherever the road may take you, those you meet along the way, promise me that you will count your blessings every day.
And a very good day or evening or morning to you whenever you happen to catch this. I am Jason Hawes, back here once again on American Faith Today to do another podcast. Great to be back, but as always and especially, so glad and so grateful to have you here with me. It truly is appreciated. And I want to get into something that I have found as I have run with this a couple of times that I'm still trying to master, and I seem to be doing this. I'm highly critical of myself in these podcasts, but I'm trying to master the exact formula to be the most efficient with my time, with what I want to bring out. And my whole problem is I always try to talk about more than I can fit into 45 minutes to begin with. But I'm going to do my best to, like I said, be efficient, and we'll see how it goes here at the end. Now, or by the end. Now, what I want to talk about is primarily a couple of news stories that have come out here this week. And it is, just to give you an idea of the time, it is, actually it's early Thursday morning, September 26th. These stories came out, I think, now at this point, 2 days ago. It seems like 1 day ago, but if I'm being technical, 2 days ago, on Tuesday the 24th, I believe both of them did. I believe both of them occurred. Certainly they both occurred this week. And I want to touch on those stories that certainly are front and center, probably front and center. One in particular, no doubt, is in the mainstream news media. But I also want to, and this is where I can get into trouble lengthwise and time-wise, but I want to do this because this is what I want to do with my show and with this particular podcast versus just regurgitating and even giving my own commentary just based on, I don't want to say mundane news events, but I want to try to bring in some events and some stories that are not being covered by the news media, certainly especially in this country. And I want to try to, if I have time to bring scripture into it, I certainly want to, but that's probably going to be at the end, so we'll see how it goes. But I certainly want to at least try to bring try to put some type of a prophetic bow on this if I can. And understand right away when I say that, this is just me, don't take it as gospel, no pun intended, because this is me doing my best to look at the news events, apply what I believe Scripture says and how I understand it and view it, and like I said, try to bring that to you in a prophetic sense as best as I can. If you agree with it, awesome. If you disagree with it, that's perfectly fine. When it comes to prophecy, there are certain things that are written that aren't to be monkeyed with, that God has interpreted, that is hopefully for most anybody who reads it and who wants to understands it. But there are certain things that we don't know, that aren't written so plainly, that we kind of theorize and speculate about, and so be it. But what I want to talk about like I said, primarily two news stories. And the first one is no doubt in one sense meant to be a distraction to us and for us, and it is in some ways silly. But at the same time, when you have a silly president, you get a boatload of silliness, or, as others have said, when you elect the clown, you get the circus. In case you did not know, which if you know me at all, then you probably already knew this, but in case you did not know, you probably just now discovered I'm not a supporter or a fan of Donald Trump. And I'll try to explain, hopefully as, again, succinctly and efficiently as I can, why that is, at least in relation to this event and this story and everything else. But what happened, of course, is, and my mind wandered for a bit, I said I've done 2 or 3 takes on this. What happened, and what I discovered, and what no doubt you, unless you've been living under a rock, what no doubt you know, that was announced Tuesday afternoon. I actually discovered it and became aware of it when I was at work, and I was in my car, and an alert from my smart news app beeped, or the tone alerted me on my phone. I don't think I looked at it right away, or at least I sure as heck hope not. But I did look at it, and I saw the story, of course, that the House of Representatives and the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, had decided to do an impeachment inquiry into Donald Trump. And I saw that when I was working. I got back to our store. It was towards the end of the day, 4 or 5 o'clock. Some people were leaving. Some people had already left and gone home. But we had a couple counter people that were in there. They were both aware of the story. One of them, I believe, is not really a supporter of Donald Trump. One of them, I think, probably at least kind of is. The one that kind of is said that, and they both thought it was silly and a waste of time, but the one that kind of is a supporter of Donald Trump made mention that, of course, they were going to go after Trump because he wasn't a politician and he couldn't be bought. And I didn't call her out then, and I'm not trying to call her out now, although this sometimes does get played, at least in part, by one of my co-workers and friends who sometimes will play it on her phone in our store during down times. Which, by the way, that's appreciated, but the thing about it is, if you believe that, I'm sorry, but that's simply not the case. And there may be some people who do not understand this or do not agree with this. There's going to be others who do. But anybody who runs for president, now, actually, a person might be able to run for president, but anybody who gets the nomination, and anybody who certainly becomes president, nobody is going to be president of the United States, and probably nobody is going to be the nominee of one of the 2 parties, major parties for president of the United States, unless they can be A, bought, bribed/bought, or B, blackmailed. Either way works. The people who run politics behind the scenes, the people who run the electoral election process behind the scenes, the people who basically at this time, and for a little while still to come, who run the world behind the scenes, are not going to allow somebody to basically be a nominee, I believe, or be president unless they can be bought or blackmailed. Now, if you agree with that, if you believe that, great. If you do not, well, I'll try to go a little bit deeper while still trying to be mindful of the time. Donald Trump was bailed out of his bankruptcies by one Wilbur Ross, primarily. Wilbur Ross is the Secretary of Commerce of the United States at this time. At the time that Wilbur Ross bailed out Donald Trump, He was the right-hand man, and I believe the senior vice president for the company owned and run by Jacob Rothschild. If you know anything about the Rothschilds, you know that they are the richest family in the world, without a doubt. You know that basically they control most everything in this world. Now, I know some people might think that's silly. Some people absolutely know that is correct. But I can go another level, or I can go this another way too. Consider candidate Donald Trump, who was very critical of Saudi Arabia, who criticized Hillary Clinton for accepting money and donations from Saudi Arabia based on their human rights violations, which are numerous. They are one of the most brutal, repressive regimes, murderous regimes, brutal regimes, repressive regimes toward and countries, towards women, towards Christians in this world. So he was very critical of Saudi Arabia, but what has happened since becoming president? Well, we know that Saudi Arabia has been engaging in a brutal massacre, a unjust, brutal war against the people of Yemen that has resulted in mass starvation, that has resulted in outbreaks of disease like cholera, that has resulted in the deaths and massacres and murders of, I don't even know what the toll is or what the number is in that country, but it has been one of the greatest tragedies and one of the sickest, most unjust, most unfortunate wars of our time and at this current time. And when Congress, rather surprisingly, voted to pass a resolution, both houses in a bipartisan measure, to stop supporting, through financial means, through military means, and so forth, the Saudi war in Yemen, it was Donald Trump who vetoed that measure. When Saudi Arabia, no doubt, killed the journalist who I believe wrote for the Washington Post, Donald Trump did everything that he could to say that maybe the Saudi Arabian government did not do it, even though evidence showed that yes, they did. And here most recently, when the Saudi Arabia oil fields were attacked, Donald Trump could not send our troops over there to help them fast enough. He was just waiting for the go-ahead from the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia so he could commit our American troops to the cause of Saudi Arabia. So he has basically been Saudi Arabia's best friend. He has basically, I might say, been bought by Saudi Arabia. And you could say that through the gifts that they gave him. You could say that through the money that they have spent on military weaponry from our country. You could say that in trying to protect and uphold the deal of the petrodollar. But basically he is bought by Saudi Arabia. Donald Trump did this to himself. When you're on the phone with the president of the Ukraine and you're saying, hey, I've got this aid, and we don't have all the details yet, but you're saying, I have this aid package, but you know what? What you might want to do as well is you might want to investigate Joe Biden or Hunter Biden to see what he was doing, what kind of deals he's made, what kind of money he's made, what kind of stuff he's been involved in your country. This was ridiculously stupid. This cannot look like anything but an abuse of power. Joe Biden, of course, is running for president as a Democrat. He's one of quite a few Democrats who are running. The two candidates who have been pushed as most likely to win the Democratic Party nomination are Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren.